Imagine checking into a hotel after a long flight, exhausted and ready to sleep, only to realize you're not alone in your room. This isn't a story I heard somewhere. This happened to me, and to this day, I still don't know what that man wanted, or what would have happened if I hadn't acted fast. Let me take you back to that night. It was last year, during a business trip. My company booked a room for me in a small but nice-looking hotel. About 30 to 40 rooms, 3 stories tall. My room was on the top floor. I grabbed my key from the front desk, took the elevator up, and walked down the dimly lit hallway. The carpet muffled my footsteps as I reached my door, setting my bags down and fishing for my key. Just then, the door to the room next to mine creaked open. A man stepped out. He was tall, maybe mid-40s, with a weirdly polite smile. His eyes lingered on me for a second too long before he held out his hand. "Hey, looks like we're neighbors." Confused, but not wanting to be rude, I shook his hand. His grip was too firm. I gave him a small nod and entered my room, locking the door behind me. When I glanced through the peephole, I saw him slowly walking back into his room, shutting the door. Weird. Who just steps out of their hotel room to greet a stranger like that? Brushing it off, I unpacked a bit, then collapsed on the bed. It was already late and I was exhausted. After a quick shower, I turned off the lights and got into bed. I was drifting off when I heard it. Creak. The neighbor's door. Through the sliver of light under my door, I saw a shadow step into the hallway. Then, it stopped, right in front of my room. I held my breath as the shadow shifted, like he was leaning in, listening. A long, agonizing second passed. Then, he slowly backed away and continued down the hall. My stomach twisted. That wasn't normal. I jumped out of bed and double-checked the locks before lying back down, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But something told me this was just the beginning. Let me ask you, what would you do in this situation? Would you confront the guy, call the front desk, or just ignore it and hope for the best? Drop your answer in the comments, because, trust me, it gets worse. The next day was packed with meetings and presentations. I didn't get back to the hotel until 10 p.m., exhausted. Tossing my work bag on the bed, I went straight to the shower. And that's when I heard it. Beep. My blood ran cold. That was the sound of an electronic keycard unlocking my door. Someone was coming in. My first thought? The neighbor. But how did he have a key to my room? I stood frozen in the shower as the door slowly creaked open, then clicked shut. Soft footsteps pattered across the carpet. Right outside the bathroom, they stopped. He knew I was in here. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I felt trapped. Then, a rustling noise. He was going through my things. My stomach clenched. He wasn't just robbing me. He was waiting. I had no weapon, no phone, just a towel and my bare hands. I had to act. I took a deep breath, then slammed my fists against the bathroom door, screaming at the top of my lungs. The footsteps stumbled. Then, a mad dash for the door. I burst out of the bathroom just in time to hear my door slam shut. He was gone. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and called 911. The police arrived, but he had already disappeared. Hours later, they found him sitting in his car in the hotel parking lot. They questioned him, but since he hadn't stolen anything or physically harmed me, they couldn't charge him with much. But why did he do it? Did he just want to scare me, rob me, or was it something worse? To this day, I still don't know. And honestly, I don't want to. What do you think his real motive was? Drop your theories in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. And if you ever feel like someone's watching you in a hotel, trust your gut. Because sometimes the real horror isn't a ghost or a monster. It's the person right next door. Las Vegas hotels never sleep. The neon lights, the endless ringing of slot machines, and the constant buzz of life. It's easy to forget that darkness lurks even in the busiest places. I was a security guard at one of the largest hotels in Vegas in my late 20s. The pay was great, but the job, it had its unsettling moments. You see strange things happen in hotels. People vanish, rooms hold secrets, and sometimes the dead make phone calls. This is the story of the night I answered a call from a room that was supposed to be empty. It was a late-night shift, around 11 p.m. I was at the front desk, chatting with 2 coworkers, trying to stay awake. My shift ended at midnight, and I was counting the minutes. Then, the phone rang. I glanced at the screen. The call was coming from a room upstairs. Weird. I picked up. "Hotel security, how can I help you?" A man's voice came through, shaky, nervous. "There's something happening in the room down the hall. Please come quick. Something's wrong." I asked him to explain, but his voice turned frantic. "Just hurry." I'm really scared. The call cut off. I checked the caller's room number, told my coworkers what happened, and took the elevator up to investigate. When the doors slid open, an eerie silence greeted me. No sounds, no voices, just nothing. I walked toward the room. I expected to hear the disturbance the caller mentioned, maybe arguing, loud TV, but there was nothing, and even stranger, the caller's door was shut. Shouldn't he be waiting for me? I knocked. "Hotel security. Sir, you called us? Is everything okay?" Silence. I knocked again, harder. No response. I glanced down the hallway. That's when another door creaked open behind me. An older woman peeked out. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with fear. "Are you security?" she asked in a whisper. I nodded. "Did you hear anything strange?" Her voice trembled. "Loud noises, a few minutes ago, but I don't know from where." I could tell she was scared. And honestly, so was I. Something wasn't right. If you were in my position, what would you do next? Would you keep knocking? Try to open the door? Or would you leave and pretend you heard nothing? Drop your answer in the comments below, because what happens next will make you question everything. All right, here's what I did. Can you call the room back? Let's see if they answer. They tried. No response. A few moments later, they called me back. We just checked our system. That room isn't booked tonight." I froze. Not booked? Then who called me? My hands tightened around my security key card. If no one was supposed to be in there, I had the right to enter. I slid the key in. The door unlocked with a soft click. The room was spotless, bed made, lights off, no signs of struggle, no luggage, no guests. I checked the closet, the bathroom, under the bed, nothing. Then I saw the phone. I picked it up, turned it over, checked the serial number. Back at my desk, I ran a log of all the calls made that night. And there it was, a recorded call from that room, the one I had answered. The next morning, the story got even darker. A guest staying on that same floor was reported missing by a family member. Hotel security pulled surveillance footage. The missing person was last seen leaving the hotel alone, 2 hours before I got the call. Were the two incidents connected? No one knows. To this day, the caller was never identified, and the missing guest still hasn't been found. Back when I was 18, during my senior year of high school, I played for our school's softball team. That year, we were actually really good, and because of that, we got invited to a tournament in Las Vegas. It was a huge deal for us. We checked into a hotel about 15 minutes from the city, and by the time we got to our rooms, it was already past 9 p.m. My 3 closest friends and I decided to share a room. It was supposed to be a fun, chill night before our first game the next morning. By 10 p.m., we were all settled in, exhausted but excited. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when... ring. The hotel phone rang. At first, none of us moved. Who even calls a hotel room phone? For a few seconds, we just stared at each other. Then, out of curiosity and a bit of unease, We decided I should answer it. I picked up. "Hello?" A man's voice, low, almost a whisper, responded. "Your room hasn't been paid for. One of you needs to come down to the lobby immediately to fix the issue." I froze. That didn't make sense. I had literally watched our coach pay for the room earlier. And why would they give us keys if we hadn't paid? Something felt wrong. I told him, "No, we already paid." But he ignored me. His voice got firmer. "One of you needs to come down. Just one." A shiver ran down my spine. His insistence, the way he whispered, it felt off. I glanced at my friends. They were wide-eyed, waiting for my reaction. Then his tone changed. His voice sharpened. "If you don't send one person down, there will be consequences." All right, pause for a second. Let's say you were in my situation. You're in a hotel room with your friends, and some stranger on the phone is demanding one of you come downstairs alone. What would you do? Would you stay locked in the room, call the front desk, or would curiosity get the better of you? Tell me in the comments. I want to know how you'd handle this. My gut was screaming at me. Something wasn't right. So I said, "We're not going anywhere. If there's a problem, you can send someone up." And I hung up. For a while, we just sat there, tense, listening. Nothing happened. No one knocked. No one came. Eventually, we decided to just forget about it and go to sleep. But then, ring. The phone rang again. We didn't answer. It rang again. And again. None of us slept much that night. The next morning, we told our coach. He went straight to the front desk and asked if there had been any issue with our payment. Their response? "What are you talking about?" They had no record of a call being made to our room. And here's the creepy part. They said their front desk never makes calls that late at night. They checked security cameras, but we never heard back about what they found. And honestly, I don't think I want to know. Who called us? How did they know our room number? And more importantly, what would have happened if one of us had actually gone downstairs? To this day, I still think about that night, and I still get chills. So what do you think? Was it some kind of sick prank? Or something even more sinister? Let me know your theories in the comments. And if you've ever had a creepy hotel experience, I definitely want to hear about it. Stay safe, and remember, if your hotel phone rings in the middle of the night, maybe don't answer it. Vacations are supposed to be relaxing, right? A time to unwind, to escape the stress of daily life. But what if I told you that our dream vacation nearly ended in a nightmare? That one moment of trust could have cost me my child forever. And the scariest part? I'll never know how many kids they've done this to before or after. Let me take you back to the summer trip I'll never forget and never forgive. It was our family tradition. Every summer we would check into a different resort for a week of pure relaxation. My wife and I, along with our two boys, Sam and Alan, always chose resorts with pools and water parks so the kids could entertain themselves while we unwound. This year was no different. We checked in early, unpacked, and within minutes the boys were begging to go to the water park. My wife and I found a spot by the pool while they ran off, laughing and playing with the other kids. The warm sun, the sound of splashing water. It was the perfect start to our vacation. 2 hours passed. The sun was beginning to set, and we decided it was time to head back to our room to get ready for dinner. That's when things got unsettling. I went to find the boys, spotting Sam first. "Where's your brother?" I asked. Sam pointed to the farthest corner of the park, where Alan was sitting on a lounge chair, talking to another boy about his age. Next to them sat a couple, presumably the boy's parents. I walked over, introduced myself, and nothing. No words, no friendly greeting, just a forced, almost robotic smile. Something about them felt off. "Come on, Alan, time for dinner," I said, placing my hand on his shoulder. As we walked back, he casually mentioned something that made my stomach twist. Dad, that boy introduced me to his parents. They said I should have dinner with them tonight. A strange, heavy silence filled the air. Why would complete strangers invite my child to dinner without even speaking to me? That wasn't normal. That wasn't okay. I told my wife the moment we got to our room. She shared my concern immediately. "We're keeping a close eye on him," she said. "No way he's going near them again." But what we didn't realize was that they weren't done with us yet. After dinner, we returned to the hotel around 5 p.m., exhausted. The kids were barely keeping their eyes open as we stepped into the elevator. And that's when my heart stopped. Standing right in front of the elevator was Alan's new friend and his mother. She smiled, that same empty, forced smile. "Would Alan like to join us for dinner tonight?" she asked softly. My wife and I froze. They'd been waiting for us, watching, timing our return perfectly. I forced a polite but firm reply. "We already ate, maybe another time." Her smile faded. Without a word, she turned and walked down the hall. We rushed into our room and locked the door. That was it. Alan was never going near that family again. We sat him down, made him promise not to talk to them, and told Sam to keep an extra eye on his brother if we weren't around. I thought we had handled it. I thought we were safe. I was so wrong. What would you do in this situation? If a complete stranger kept trying to get your child alone, what would be your next move? Would you report it? Confront them? Or would you leave immediately? Tell me in the comments, because what happened next still gives me nightmares. That night, I was jolted awake. Someone was shaking my arm. It was Sam. His voice was barely a whisper. "Dad, Alan is talking to someone at the door." I shot up, heart pounding. I turned the corner and saw Alan standing at the front door, his small hands fumbling with the lock. And from the other side, a voice, a quiet, eerie whisper. "Just unlock it, Alan. It's okay. Open the door." I sprinted. "Alan, back away from the door." Alan jumped, startled. I reached the door in seconds, slamming my hand against it. Silence. Then, footsteps. Fast ones. Running. I swung the door open just in time to see a shadowy figure disappearing around the corner. Adrenaline took over. I chased after them, rounding the corner toward the elevators. And then, nothing. The hallway was empty. No doors opening, no footsteps, no sign of anyone. I stood there, panting, my fists clenched. Whoever they were, they had vanished. I ran back to the room, told my wife to lock everything, and rushed down to the front desk. I expected security to be all over it. I expected cameras to reveal who this person was. I expected something. But no. No cameras in the hallways. No proof. No action. All they offered was a refund for the remaining nights. We took it. We packed up immediately and switched to another resort 30 minutes away. Even now, I hate knowing those people are still out there, still lurking, still waiting for the next unsuspecting family to arrive. And the scariest thought of all, that little boy with them, was he their real son? Or was he just another missing child, used to lure in the next victim? I'll never know, but I'll never, ever forget. Parents, stay alert, trust your instincts, and if something ever feels off, it probably is. If this story chilled you to the bone, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life horror stories. And don't forget, what would you have done in this situation? Drop your answers in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware. When I was 14, my family took a trip to a ski resort in Colorado. I was the oldest of 4 kids. My older brother, my younger brother, and my little sister, who was just 7 at the time. We got along well, and on our second night at the hotel, we decided to check out the sauna. The warmth felt great after a long day in the snow, and we sat there for at least 30 minutes, just relaxing. Then my older brother broke the silence. He was hungry. We all were. That's when someone suggested it. Someone made the worst possible decision. Why don't we send Nora to grab some food from the room? Now looking back, I don't know why we thought this was a good idea. A 7-year-old walking through a massive unfamiliar hotel alone. But at the time, it made sense. It was just a quick trip. So she went. Minutes passed. Then bang, bang, bang. The sauna door slammed open, and my little sister came running in, gasping for breath. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. There's a man. He was following me. She could barely get the words out. But we didn't need more explanation, because right as she said it, we saw him. Through the fogged-up glass window of the sauna, a shadow moved. A man we didn't recognize. He wasn't a hotel guest. That much was obvious. He was older, his back slightly hunched as he moved. His body was wrapped in layers of winter clothing, thick coats that made no sense for someone hanging around a swimming pool area. He didn't have a towel. He wasn't wet. And yet, he was there. He wasn't walking aimlessly. He wasn't lost. He was pacing back and forth outside the sauna, watching. Now let me ask you, what would you have done? Would you have rushed out to confront him? Would you have stayed hidden? Or would you have tried to run? Tell me in the comments what you think the best move would have been. Because at that moment, we had seconds to decide. Before we could even react, the man turned toward us, and then he moved. Slow, deliberate steps, straight to the sauna door. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I would pass out. I knew he couldn't see us. The glass was one way, but somehow it felt like he knew we were in there. Then, click, the door handle turned. The heavy wooden door swung open, and for the briefest moment, we were face to face with him. His face was blank. No words, no emotion, just staring. Then after what felt like an eternity, his eyes flicked across the room. His body stiffened, and without a single word, he shut the door and walked away. He didn't just leave the pool area. He walked straight out of the building, not into another hotel hallway, not to another room, but outside, into the cold, as if he hadn't even belonged there in the first place. We rushed back to our room, out of breath, terrified, and told our parents everything. They were furious we had let our little sister walk around alone. And honestly, they had every right to be. The hotel staff checked their records, but there was no sign of anyone matching that man's description. No guest had checked in that looked like him. No employees recognized him. He wasn't supposed to be there. So, who was he? And more importantly, what was he planning to do? I try not to think about what would have happened if my sister hadn't run fast enough, if we hadn't been in that sauna together. Because I know, without a doubt, he wasn't just some lost old man. He came there for something, or worse, someone. If this had happened to you, would you have reacted differently? Ever had a similar experience? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear more real-life horror stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because sometimes the scariest things aren't ghosts, they're people. It was a Friday night. I was on a business trip, staying at a rundown hotel in a part of town where you double-check every lock before sleeping. The meetings had drained me, and though I wasn't really tired, I knew I had to get some sleep. After tossing and turning for an hour, I gave up and put on a podcast, something to drown out the eerie silence of the unfamiliar room. Slowly, I started drifting off, but at 2 a.m. something pulled me back. At first, I thought it was part of the podcast, just a faint tapping sound. Then I sat up. No, this was different. I removed my headphones. The sound got louder. It was coming from the front door, not a knock, not a scratch. It was the lock moving. I froze. My room was on the ground floor, meaning anyone could easily reach it from outside. Maybe it was just another guest, a drunk mistake. Then the door handle jiggled. Someone was picking the lock. Imagine you're alone in a hotel room and someone is actively trying to break in. You have seconds to react. What would you do? Call the front desk, hide, or something else? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know how you'd handle this. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I bolted to my suitcase and pulled out my 14-round pistol, always packed for situations I hoped would never come. The lock twisted, clicked, unlatched. The door creaked open an inch, then two. Then, thunk, it stopped. That cheap second latch, the one hotels install to stop doors from fully opening. That was the only thing between me and the intruder. Then, a hand reached through the gap, pale, desperate, searching for the latch. Without thinking, I raised my gun, aimed for the opening, and shouted, "I have a gun!" The hand snapped back. I heard the rapid footsteps retreating down the hall. I debated calling the police, but he was gone. By the time they'd arrive, he'd be nowhere in sight. Morning came. I headed to the front desk, ready to report the incident. But the lobby was already swarming with police. Turns out the guy was an escaped prisoner. He had been going room to room, picking locks and robbing guests at knife point. I never found out if they caught him. 9 months later, I still check my locks, twice. And sometimes, when the world is too quiet, I still hear that lock clicking open. That latch on my hotel door, that thin strip of metal, it saved my life. But tell me, if that was you in that room, and the lock had failed, what would you have done next?